Hey everybody, Dacia Coffee here, which means it's Wednesday, and welcome back to Corporate Caffeine. Now, as you guys know, one of my goals is to introduce you to some of the amazing, brilliant, talented people that I am blessed to work alongside and that have given me insight, advice, and at times, like today, kind of blown my mind around certain topics that we ought to be aware of in the world. And so that leads me to my introductions of my guests. Today, Mike Quinn and Devin Jones are joining me from Active Cipher. Now, I would tell you their backgrounds, but honestly, you guys, I will not do it justice. So, guys, I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourselves because you both have amazing, very interesting backgrounds. I mean, in my humble opinion, the type of stuff that stories and movies are based on. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves to our audience?
I'm Mike Quinn. Good day. Welcome, everyone. So I'm the CEO at Active Cipher. I'm going to work a little bit backwards. Prior to that, I was with Microsoft running enterprise cybersecurity, and prior to that with Cisco for 20 plus years, delivering all of the services and professional services around disasters and critical infrastructure and those things. But my background started with a tour with the Marine Corps and then also with the Central Intelligence Agency, where I was a special operations officer. So I dealt with counterterrorism, cybersecurity in its infancy back in the, I'm going to date myself, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I'm glad to be here, and I'm going to ask Devin to give his background.
Hi, thank you, and welcome everybody. I'm Devin Jones, Chief Strategy Officer for Active Cipher, and I'll do the opposite that Mike did, because that was the instructions. I started out in the United States Navy in the intelligence community as a regional expert for the Northern Middle East and the Soviet Union, and when I got out, I realized I was trained for nothing in the civilian world, so I went into building routers and switches. Joined Cisco Systems, and I did both support and development and product management at Cisco for 15 years. Did DevOps at Juniper Networks for 3 years, and then I started doing startups and got deeply into the security industry. It matched a lot of the things that I did conceptually in the intelligence community, and found myself in Active Cipher.
Well, welcome. And you guys, you can see why I am so excited to have them on. And there have been times where they get talking and teach me things, and I literally have to remind myself, whoa, we have work to do, because it's just this amazing, interesting rabbit hole of the cybersecurity landscape that we live in. So, guys, I want to kind of start with just a simple question in regards to cybersecurity is all over the news, but it seems to be a really underfunded and misunderstood environment. What's really happening, and why do you think that is? Why is it so in our face, but it's something that it doesn't seem like companies are really doing this well?
I guess I'll start on this. So first off, being in the intelligence business with Devin as well and everything, we call it cybersecurity today. It's been espionage for generations. People want information. They want data. They want to be able to leverage that information. You may think that and not understand how the intelligence industry works, but we don't go after a target. We're after Dacia. I'm going to go to Dacia, and I'm going to then build a tree of all of her connections, all the people she knows. And I'm going to look at them and find ways to utilize their information to get more on Dacia, so then I can get the information I want. I may never actually have to deal with her. However, some of those people are great access points, as we know today, to getting the data for people that they want. They may take 1 million people's information and they only want 5. But that's the way the systems work, and that is the way that they are able to hide what they're looking for. So this hasn't changed since day one, right? I mean, man has always wanted to know more about their surroundings, the people, their enemies, right? They want to know about the cooperating people they're working with. I mean, U.S. government, heck, they spy on the French spy on us. We're supposed to be in NATO. We're supposed to be allies, but we're still watching each other simply because of the fact that we have a level of trust that only goes so far. And that's where, you hear the term zero trust. I started with no trust at the CIA, right? It's like, okay, trust nothing, no one. And so companies today, what they're seeing is that when Target got hit a number of years ago, everybody was shocked. By the time Home Depot got hit 3 years later, everybody went back to Home Depot the next day and went shopping. Now it happens and they expect to get a Dear John letter and go about their day. People and companies have lowered the attack to an everyday occurrence. Okay, it's like a light bulb went out in the dining room. I'll get to it later. And cybersecurity is starting to push that mentality that, and even Microsoft said it, right? It isn't if you're compromised, it's, you already are. It's when are they going to come get you? And in that, companies are saying, then we don't need to spend a lot of money on it. We just need to have and meet certain criteria that show that we're involved and we're protecting certain things. Yet, and I'm going to leave this to Devin because he's been there more than I have, down in the IT organizations where the people are working, they have a different view about how much should be invested, where and why. And that's kind of the key thing, business and operations. What's the delta between those two?
Well, I mean, it's horrifying to think that they're only doing enough to basically put a PR spin on, and I don't know that that's true in the ops side. So Devin, tell me, for the people that know, the ones that really know, we've got to address this. How are they handling it? Because this is a really overwhelming scenario.
Well, that's an excellent question. And I will say, I don't believe that they're just checking boxes for PR reasons. Fundamentally, keep in mind that the internet as business infrastructure is like 25 years old since it's gone mainstream, like late 90s. Got a computer because my word processor is really cool and I got a spreadsheet. Word processor alone wouldn't do it. And then I get email, so I get instantaneous communication. Then I get to do transactions much quicker, and then I could do commerce online. So I have a little bit of a different twist on it. I think oftentimes we forget how short a period of time this has been an infrastructure for us. And the fact is that nobody really thought, security was secondary. It was an afterthought. And they thought they were buying security when they bought a router or a switch. So they don't really know. And they also don't know how to value the assets that they have. So we've been riding on a free lunch for about 25 years in regards to security. Now, the folks in the field, the question you asked is, how are they handling it? They're not handling it well. And I will say that in their commitment right now, they're so committed to the cause and concepts, but they're tired of being underfunded and underappreciated and overstressed. So we're seeing now I saw a survey that about 45% of cybersecurity professionals are thinking about leaving the industry. So we have a great resignation now in the economy, but it's worse in security, and it's going to catch up to us because about 40% of cybersecurity professionals know somebody who quit and left the industry to do something else because they were just tired of not having the tools. And one note to illustrate this, about 50% of the employment contracts today for CISOs have written into it organizational budget, which means they've been burned so many times by organizations in the past that they don't believe what they're saying. So either put up or don't hire me.
Right. That is absolutely fascinating. And I can see that. I mean, it would be so incredibly frustrating. I mean, the image that pops into my head is of a person screaming at the top of their voice in the middle of the street and just nobody's paying attention. I mean, everybody's just ignoring what's being said. And so, yeah, especially if you've gone through an entire career, to either go, it's not worth it, or, to bring that to the table that I'm not going to be a part of underinvesting and you not allowing me to do the job that I know I'm capable of doing. That is fascinating to think that they have to do that at the hiring level, not later on during just the budgetary cycle. That's amazing.
Well, yeah. And to that point, Daisy, on the hiring side, you have to remember that, the internet, when it started out, the founders of Cisco, Sandy and Len, They wanted it to be a research network. It was just for researchers to have a high-speed capability to take dissimilar environments, a Gould Modicon computer and a PDP-11, and talk to each other, right? Share some research. Business got a hold of it. Now, email attachments, they're de facto. Hey, I don't have to mail it to you. I don't have to fax it to you. Hey, look, I can attach it. There was no rules around what you could attach. So it was like a free-for-all. And as this went on, the IT departments, remember, security was part of IT, InfoSec, but it was in the IT organization. Then all of a sudden you started hearing that I have a chief information officer. Now I have a chief, security officer, right? And both of these, that word chief means they're supposed to be talking at the upper level C-suite, okay? Now the discussion is who has the budget? And not only that, CIOs are looking at the CISO going, look, you're just piling a bunch of stuff on my desk on top of all the other stuff I've got, telling me I have to invest. Now, what do I de-invest in? Okay. And I've got a business sales team out there, marketing, engineering, everything going, hey, look, you do all their things, we're out of business. You got to do my things so we can be in business. And this back and forth, and you have the CISO and the CIO both talking to the board of directors, talking to other executives in the company. The company just paralyzes itself on decision making at that higher level. And then everybody looks at it and says, who are we serving? And I'm not going to pick the right answer. Am I serving my clients or am I serving my shareholders? The answer is you're doing both. Can't satisfy either, you're out of business. And security becomes this big issue, a differentiator in business. Also, it can become a gateway, a wall to success. I'm going to raise my hand and say, everybody who's watching, how many of you deinstalled BitLocker the first chance you got to get it out of your machine? I do every time, right? Things that get in the way, you go around. And so the IT teams, as well as the CISO, are seeing people using third-party storage, going out and using GitHub, going out and using, Google and other things, particularly in the work at home environment. I've now inherited as an IT organization, my employees' printers at home and their kids' laptop. It's all on my network now. And there's no security. And so the security guys, they say to them, hey, make this secure. And they're like, good, take it off the network. First answer, right? And so they get frustrated, as Devin said. But the other thing, too, is this isn't an unlimited supply of knowledge. Okay, a lot of people with titles in this business, right, who don't really have all the training that you need. They all didn't just pop out with a master's in cybersecurity from Brown University last week. They didn't, right? Yet, on the other hand, they have work experience. And that's the big devil in the details for this, and by the way, it isn't a quiet resignation. It's like, boom, I'm gone, and you're going to feel it. And that's the concern, because they're not going to come back. They're going to go open. They're going to go open their flower shop. They're going to go open, doggy grooming. They're going to be as far away from this stuff as they can, and you can't blame people for that. And this isn't the first time this has happened in other industries as well. Medical industry, doctors are going, look, I'm done, bye. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, I don't have anesthesiologists. What happened? So
it's huge. There's a couple of different points I want to dig into there. So, it's scary thought, because if you're talking about publicly traded companies, they do have access to top talent. They do at least have structures where they have CISOs or CIOs, and there's at least an acknowledgement that this has to be part of the business, even if it's an undervalued or underinvested part of the business. So my question is, what about mid-market? What about privately held companies? Should they be thinking about this? And, what are the risks for them? Is this really only a Fortune 1000 type of a conversation? Or, how dangerous is this? Because, are there a lot of people with the head in the sand?
I have a statistic that should illustrate how important it is for smaller businesses. Of the smaller businesses that have a true data breach, 60% are out of business in 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
So when you start going up market, in the mid market, when you're talking about a slightly larger company but not a Fortune 1000, you have a little more resiliency built into the business because of the traction the business has. but it's going to hurt. And a lot of the requirements we're starting to see in legislation are going to be more and more onerous. In fact, you've got a couple of market trends that are going to start impacting them significantly in the very near future. Insurance has been operating at somewhere between a 70 and a 110% loss ratio on premiums. So they've redone how they're doing their insurance. They're starting to match security frameworks to the company's ability to be insured. They're raising their premiums by up to 175% this year. And they're excluding a lot of the situations, so you don't even get as much coverage. For instance, Lloyd's of London just announced that they aren't going to cover acts of war, and acts of war are defined as any nation-state attack, and it does not have to be a declared war. There's others as well. So you're going to pay a lot more for insurance. You have a lot more requirements to get insurance to make sure that you have your security maturity to the level that they will insure you, and they're not going to insure you for as much.
And the other part of this, when you talk mid-tier and you talk private companies, there's no external auditing requirements that often go with publicly traded companies. Microsoft has offered, a SOC 2 type, environment for these companies that are mid-tier to work in. They're saying, look, we can put together an environment that you can operate in that makes you reflective of a larger Fortune 1000 type client, customer, without you having to hire all the people. So what you're finding now is service providers, we call them managed service providers, security service providers, large cloud environments that are saying, hey, come to me. I offer all of these protections. I put together an environment in which you can operate, and you don't have to spend the big money. What you're going to be is one of hundreds. So Dacia, you're a fractional chief marketing officer, right? So you have a number of clients that you do CMO work for, but none of them could afford or need a Dacia full-time. So they get, and we, Active Cipher, right, get the benefits of your knowledge across all of your clients. You pull all your customers in, and you generate a higher level of capability for me and my company and others by just osmosis, right? Just the ability to be there. So these companies that are mid-tier, if they take advantage of these environments, they're going to get a larger, less myopic view of what's going on in the space around security for a better dollar value. However, there are things missing in those capabilities, and that is, do they know your business, and can they respond to, again, as Devin said, those legislative environments, which are going to be, everyone's going to get the same haircut, right? There's no, you're this size, you got to do this. It's like everybody's got to do this. India went through this thing the other a month or so ago. They said everybody has to report within 24 hours a cyber breach and the cause. And everybody in the industry laughed themselves silly because, first off, first 24 hours that you think you've had a breach, you might get an inkling of it because all of a sudden your data is somewhere. The ability to tell what happened, and everything. It's like you're gonna hire a guy. I'm gonna call him your stunt bud. He's gonna come in and everything. Okay, it's him. Fire him. Boom. Okay, he's fired. Okay, we covered that. And he goes down and gets hired by the next company, gets fired by them. Right? He's the stunt man. Right? He steps in and takes it. That's not going to happen. Right? Because Devin's point is the trust level of a company. The thing that I look at all the time is when the Target breach happened, before it happened, you couldn't find a shopping cart, even in the parking lot. Stores packed. After that, you could see them just stacked up, waiting to be used. It was so far. They closed their Canadian business down completely. It hit them financially. Brand protection, brand trust. Okay, and Devin talked about it, the online economy, right? All of these environments, are making companies more susceptible to this level of abuse. And again, they may be after your company, but they may just be after your money through ransomware. And it's like, it can hit anybody. They can ransom everybody. I mean, we have doctors. I have a doctor who got ransomed. What did he do? He threw everything away and went back to paper, right? I mean, he went to the other extreme. He's like, no, we're back on paper. It's like, you don't have Epic, no my chart. I look at it going, maybe I like you, but maybe I don't want to do business with you. So the impact can be significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because you guys have a very different paradigm about this, but the current paradigm seems to be just close. I mean, constrict. So get off my network, like block certain portals, go back to manual, I mean, like almost try to reverse progress or reverse things that, I mean, once the cat's out of the bag. But, before I chase that rabbit and that squirrel right there, you guys were talking to me off camera a while back about this idea of like human hacking. So, it's not just about these massive hackers doing these network attacks. Like, tell me a little bit also about what you guys have seen, like some of the more common and possibly even sinister and almost impossible, not totally, but almost impossible to protect against. Like, tell me what this human hacking thing is that you guys have seen.
Not sure where to start because, actually, Mike and I have talked about this. Hacking has become an interesting business because it's outsourced. You can actually buy hacking as a service and buy a botnet and ransomware as a service, which is really cheap, right? I mean, the last I heard, a ransomware for a service network was like $100 an hour, $250 an hour, or something. I mean, whatever, it's cheap. But Mike and I have talked in the past. If he and I are former intelligence professionals. If we're going to actually try and infiltrate a company and steal the IP or steal the PII or whatever they've got that I want, I'm probably going to actually either infiltrate myself or hire somebody to do it because it's just cheaper than building out an automated attack. So it's, in fact, I won't mention the nation state, but there's a nation state that is actually doing that across the United States and in both private companies as well as research facilities and universities where they're just having people get hired and their IP just goes out the door. And it's cheaper that way in many cases.
To Devin's point, so we have ELINT, right? Electronic Intelligence Collection. You have SIGINT, Signal Intelligence Collection, and you have the original one, UMINT, right? You recruit people. Okay, now I literally recruit people to spy on their own country, spy on their own companies. Two examples. I'm going to spend some time later this week at our university talking to their research department, because I'll give you an example. The internet would not exist today as it is if Stanford had been able to protect their IP, because there was a grad dorm that included Cisco, Sun Microsystems, the list goes on. All of those companies, everyone left, started their own companies, and they invented the internet as we know it, not as it was intended. Okay? That was, they stole the IP. They were the IP themselves, right? Now, there is, as Devin stated, right, there are countries that send people here to go to work, to go to companies. We read about it all the time, right? And it isn't the guy standing at the end of a runway taking a picture of a new Navy jet. I mean, it's the guy who went to work for the manufacturer, and all of a sudden that Navy jet now looks, it's identical to the one in China or in Russia. And you're like, wait a minute, and you go, oh, they use the same wind tunnel as they do to design all the cars today. All the cars look the same, my wife says, because it's all the same wind tunnel, so they all come out the same. The reality is yes and no, right? But what I'm getting at, and Devin's getting at, is that the human intelligence, I literally had a client prior to my time here at Active Cipher that I went in and I said, look, I can get at all your information. And they said, no, you can't get through our firewalls or any of that. I went with $500 worth of Starbucks cards and sat and talked to the employees coming into the Starbucks. And I said, look, I'll give you $100 Starbucks card. Give me your password just for an hour. Then you go into IT and change your password. And they took the cards. Now I have a non-traceable access. And all the guy did was had to go in and change his password. No, I never logged in. I never did any of that. But when I went to the board of directors and I said, this is what I did, they totally freaked out. They had never even thought about that. And I said, look, it was a coffee. It was $100 coffee card.
Yeah.
Okay? And you're a what company? And they're like, holy crap. And I said, yeah. Can you protect against that? You have to answer that question yourselves, right? How far do you lock it down till you do go out of business because you can't do business? I mean, we had one when I was at Microsoft where uh, a large delivery service company, I mean, big, 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 big. They compromised their scanners. And so they would go to companies and they would scan all this information, and all the companies they targeted were core suppliers to the U.S. military, and rapid response teams. Went down. I actually had to go to a company and say, you got to quit painting your pallets blue. They count your blue pallets on the trucks, and they know that it's a military load. You got to change the color scheme. You can't use blue pallets to the military. They're just out there counting pallets, going that truck's going there, and they follow the truck. I mean, it's this level of intelligence collection now, at the Uber state on the internet. Holy cow, what they can track. And I'm trying to make everybody paranoid. I really am. Okay, because
To do intelligence does not require James Bond. It requires Mr. Bean.
yes.
Yes, exactly. And on that note, I am actually going to leave our audience on a cliffhanger, because the truth of the matter is you guys do have a really interesting, important point of view around how do you protect against that? How do you do cybersecurity well as a whole system that builds value into your company, that builds, confidence, that protects everything that you've built, and that so that you don't become that 60% that doesn't have the resilience to get through it. And so I am super excited to have you guys share that, but we're out of time. So that means next week, you guys, Mike and Devin, have agreed to come back, because I wanted you guys to hear the depth of what's really happening out there and what this fledgling industry is up to in cybersecurity. And, what is the bright side? What are these smart brains and, people that are in the know? What are they saying about how do we really defend against this, and how do we protect our companies, our IP, and our values? So, gentlemen, I'm super excited for next week. And thank you guys so much. Before we wrap, any final words, anything else that you want to add to today's conversation before we pick up next week?
Sure. First, I want to thank you for giving us the platform, to have this conversation. It helps us as we go through this to learn and be able to educate people. We're at a company called Active Cipher. You can find us out on the internet. We are open to these conversations with others, and we look forward to having more of this discussion. And the one thing I will say is that we are in the infancy of this effort. They're getting cleaner, they're getting smarter, they're getting less detectable, and that's called tradecraft. And they're developing a very good set of tradecraft. As Devin stated, you can hire them to do the things you want them to do, and you're hands off.
Amazing. Devin, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to next week. It'll be great. Thank you again. This has been a lot of fun. We get to vent our spleen a little bit. And I'd really like to talk about some of the shifts that are happening in the industry that are going to make things better and safer. Different ways of approaching the problem that are going to make it a lot easier for companies and large organizations as well as small.
I love it. So you guys, I'm going to take some, I'm going to ask for permission afterwards, ask for grace after I do this, but we're only going to be able to cover so much next week. We're going to cover a lot of ground, but honestly, if this has got your brain churning, I challenge you guys to reach out to Mike or Devin just for conversation. What happens in the depth of what's happening and just how to think about this in your life and in your business and your leadership teams and your structure is really profound. So guys, I'm totally throwing that out that you might get some introduction requests and just conversation requests, because I think that's, that's profound. just to be able to talk this out loud and think it through. So if you guys want more information about Active Cipher, you can find them, as he said, online. I encourage you to follow both of them on LinkedIn. You can see their names on the screen, and I will also have their links in the show notes and the comments below the platform that you're on. Gentlemen, thank you so much, and we will reconvene next week, next Wednesday. Onward and upward, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.